The Atlanta Hawks have been one of the more disappointing and more confusing teams early on in this NBA season. The Atlanta Hawks, of course, had some fairly lofty expectations heading into this year, getting themselves into the Eastern Conference Finals last season, but they currently sit at 8-9 outside of the playing games. But here's telltale of the story when you're looking at it from a pure record standpoint. 7-1 at home, 1-8 on the road. And for a team that struggles defensively, it makes sense. Teams get going on offense, crowd gets behind them. The Hawks might struggle and do struggle at times to get their offense going a little bit more on the road than they do at home, which is a natural trend across the NBA this year and for years. And it makes them a pretty rough road team. And so now they have won 4 games in a row. And guess what? Those games were all at home. And they had a brutal losing streak that was on their West Coast road trip. So this Atlanta Hawks team has really struggled on the road. They have struggled on the defensive end to a fairly extreme degree for a team that was a much improved defensive team. Once Nate McMillan took over the team last year throughout mid-season. But they are 27th in defensive rating so far this season. But the top 6 offense, and that offense being very elite at home, is what allowed them to stay around 500 up to this point. However, this team is not going to make the playoffs, or even if they do, be able to do anything if this defense doesn't improve and they can't figure out how to play on the road. And things aren't being helped by the fact that DeAndre Hunter is out with an injury, of course, and he's a big part of their defense. But their defense wasn't good with him in the lineup either. It was still 27th in the league and around when he got injured as well. Clint Capella, of course, recovered from an injury this offseason, and he's looked better over the last week or so since they've gotten back home, but he hasn't been anywhere near as good as he was last year and hasn't quite lived up to that expectation that you would have for him after his extension. And Bogdan Bogdanovic has not been as good this year either, and not that he's really as much of the defensive concern, but from an offensive standpoint, he has not been anywhere near as consistent as he was last year. As for me personally, he was the most consistent offensive piece on this Bucks team last season, and he has shot less this year, no doubt about it, but his efficiency has also drastically taken a turn. Trae Young can't really be faulted here. Free throw numbers down a little bit, sure, but still getting to the line over 5 times a game, shooting well, playmaking well, and playing very good for this Hawks team. But the defense has just got to be figured out. There isn't really enough that I can look at any individual player and say one individual player or a combination of players on this team are so bad that it means that they're losing. They're confusing. That's why I said it in my intro. NBA YouTubers myself, NBA fans of the Atlanta Hawks, they're confusing. It's been said many times this year. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is when you watch the Hawks that makes them this bad record-wise at this point in time in the year, and what makes them such a poor defensive team so far this year. But it is a given that their defense does have to improve for them to remain a part of the Eastern Conference playoffs conversation. Now, they're not in jeopardy of not being in the playoffs or anything like that. It's early days. We're not even a quarter of the way into the season. They're only 4 games back of the 1 seed. Like, it's not Panic City by any stretch of the imagination. But point being is, as a collective, they do need to start playing better. Bogdanovic needs to start being more efficient. Capella can hopefully continue to keep playing a bit better. They need DeAndre Hunter to stay healthy, which is just not something he seems to be able to do, which is a concern moving forward for this group. Cam Reddish has shown flashes, really good flashes, in fact, this season, but he's also has shown times where he just doesn't look like he belongs out on the court, and he's been really hot and cold, and when it's hot, it's pretty, but when it's cold, he just doesn't deserve to be out on the court. I think we said for Gallinari, he hasn't looked that great this year either. And some of their bench guard play has not been as good as you would desire in the likes of DeLon Wright and Lou Williams. Point being is this Atlanta Hawks team still looks very good. Still has to be one of those teams that you have to think about when you get looking forward to the Eastern Conference playoffs, which they haven't really been talked about at all by anyone. They've just kind of been swept under the rug and not talked about, which sure, Atlanta, small market team, whatever. But don't forget about the Hawks. They're still going to be in the conversation, especially if they can improve their defense. But without an improvement on the defensive end, they might get in the playoffs, sure, whether that's via the playing games or not. But ultimately, if they can't improve on the defensive end, it's going to be a struggle. The only thing that could be really playing a factor here is just this team really, for a lot of these players, not having a ton of or any playoff experience. When he's talking about Trae Young, John Collins, Bogdan Bogdanovic, DeAndre Hunter, Kevin Huerter, Cam Reddish. There's a lot of guys here who didn't really have much or any playoff experience. Now to get in, play at that level of intensity, and haven't been able to buy into that high level of intensity again in the regular season. But they do need to get back to that. They need to get back to that high level of defensive intensity and compete level, because they're not good enough to just coast through and be a top 4, top 5 seed in the East. They're not. Ultimately, that is my thoughts on the Atlanta Hawks. Let me know what you guys think down below. I'd be curious to see what you guys think, because the Atlanta Hawks are definitely a confusing team to get an opinion on so far this season. But let me know down in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.